time. Like I had no appreciation for like the gravity of the people that were reaching out to me, like really big hitters at like super huge DeFi protocols, like commenting, and I had no idea. I'm like, what's Aave? Like, what's Uniswap? Like, I had no idea. And
Welcome back to another episode of the Kickbox Podcast. We've got Knyck here and a very special guest in the building. If you want to introduce yourself.
yeah, hi everyone. I'm Regan, and I am super excited to be here.
Yeah, so thank you so much for hopping on. This is Regan, not Reagan, from Twitter, co-host of M3 Voices, self-proclaimed as short and menacing, but I can't really tell how tall you are on a call, and you seem pretty chill. So,
Thank you.
don't trust the
I'm
Twitter
5'1",
bios.
I'm 5'1", but if you look at my Instagram, it's kind of deceiving. Like I kind of
Yeah,
look.
yeah, yeah.
People, even when they meet me in person, think that I'm like 5'4", and they stand right next to me and they're like, "Oh, you are short."
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like,
it's like the deceptive legs. Like I'm personally like 30% torso and like rest is just legs.
yeah, yeah.
And so that's like how you can get people.
I see. I'm like very torso-y, so they're like, "Oh, you're like 5'4", and then like stand up, they're like, "Oh my god, that's not like." So I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah, yeah, I feel you. I feel you. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, my parents are both super small. Like they're like my dad's like 5'4", my mom's 5'2". And then like I just managed to pull off like being like a little bit on the tall side. Because I was like, this is
Wow.
probably gonna be important on the internet at some point.
Yeah,
But
you definitely. Yeah, you're like, guys, I'm a little tall, okay?
yeah, in case like yeah, back in '94, they're like in case they invent dating apps, it's probably gonna be important.
Right, right. Like, oh, I know. My gosh. If they ever use
Super bad.
Bumble, oh
Yeah,
no.
exactly. Cool. So yeah, thanks for hopping on. I would love to hear a little bit about sort of, what did you study in school and like what were you interested in back in college?
Yeah, so I graduated this past May, and
Nice.
I graduated from the University of Southern California. So that was right at USC in Los Angeles.
Awesome.
And I was just studying like traditional like business finance. My
Hmm.
concentration was in finance.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I actually was studying abroad in Vienna, which
Hmm.
was in the fall of 2021, that I even got like introduced to anything crypto related because my
Yeah.
brother's actually in crypto.
Oh,
And
cool.
so my entire like college career was like nothing really interest aligned with crypto. I think
Mhm.
in my opinion, I think finance. I like interned in traditional finance, like a traditional finance bank, working in like structured products, which is like financial derivatives.
Yeah.
And I feel like that actually is super tangential into crypto, but
Hmm.
I just like knew like what the word Bitcoin and Ethereum were,
For
like
sure.
right
Yeah.
before I like even like made my Twitter in like winter of 2021. So
Got it.
yeah,
Got it. Got it.
my interests in college were a lot like less aligned. Like we're more in like the social entrepreneurship,
Hmm.
sustainability, and like
Hmm.
business finance side of
Hmm.
things. And like I think are all tangential to crypto, but really nothing with like Web3 crypto, any of that, until it kind of just like absorbed me.
Everything. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I feel you 100%. A couple of things I wanted to like touch on there. So you mentioned your brother's in crypto. What does he do?
My brother is in crypto. He helps run an asset management firm. And so my brother
Ooh.
was actually the one when my brother Vienna was going into like lockdown. This was like when the Delta variant was going around, when like lockdowns had ended.
Yeah.
But Vienna and Austria, but like Vienna, like all of Austria, I think, but definitely Vienna was like really bad.
Mm.
They, like really low vaccination rate relative to the
Hmm.
EU. So they
Hmm.
actually went into like a kind of like semi lockdown for 3 weeks. And so I
Okay.
was like, I gotta get the hell out of here. I was triple vaccinated at that point. I was like, there's no freaking way. I'm like, I'm out. Bye. So my brother had actually been at ETH Lisbon and then was like staying around
Mm.
Lisbon for a decent amount of time after.
Mm.
So he just we met in London, thankfully, because I could never have afforded London on my own.
Yeah.
And we for like a little under 2 weeks just kind of went around London and Ireland, and it was amazing and super fun.
Sounds
And that
amazing.
was kind of the first time in my life when I realized, oh my gosh, I'd never be able to do something like this with the job I was going to pursue, because like
Yeah.
you get like one vacation a year, and it's really only because I think they want to make sure you're not like doing insider trading. I don't even think they like give you the 2 week vacation because they're like nice. I think it's like an insider trading thing.
Yeah. Stop. Where are you going?
So I was like just so amazed. My brother did not graduate college. My brother
Mm.
dropped out to pursue like a couple different things before he landed in crypto. And
Oh,
so
that's
he's always
wild.
been super inspirational to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of, he just told me about a DAO when we were just walking one day, and I was like, all I know was like the Dow Jones, right? And he
Yeah.
just told me what a DAO is. And I was just super intrigued by it, but didn't
Mm.
actually dive into any of it until I was back in the States, and that was in December. And that kind of like that's kind of how I got whisked into it.
That sounds so cool. I'm actually traveling to Lisbon. So I work for Filecoin, like the IPFS people in Protocol Labs. We're having like events in Lisbon in October. So I've never been, but I'm super excited
I've
to visit.
never been. I really
Yeah.
want to go. I really
It
want to
sounds
go.
so beautiful. Do you like to travel a lot? Like, is Vienna like a new thing for you, or do you go to like Europe and all over the world?
I've never like I think so before I had my job, right, where I was working at like the bank, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have any money to travel, you know?
Yeah, I feel you.
And so my study abroad was such an interesting experience to me. I'd only ever been to Europe one time before, and that
Mhm.
was on a school trip as well. That's when I got my
Okay,
tattoo
cool.
at like a random place in like Segovia, Spain, like just stupid.
Hey, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
it was like super fun. And then went
Mhm.
back to Europe for like the first time, like by myself as an adult.
Cool,
And
cool,
that was
cool.
amazing because I was able to travel to like 10 different countries.
Mhm.
And Vienna was awesome because they actually were doing like, I only had to go to school like 1 day a week. That's how I set up my schedule. That's why I even chose
Yeah,
Vienna.
you like
Thanks,
stack
Dad.
the
My dad,
calendar on one day.
my
Yeah,
dad just like turned on all the lights because he can see up in like a call. So thanks,
yeah.
God. He just left. As you can see, I'm
Nice.
just so much brighter.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I feel you, I feel you. My parents are always finding me like working in a dark room, and they're like, "Are you good?" I'm like, "Yeah." I just like completely don't even notice.
your eyes are straining. I'm like, okay, sorry. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm like, sorry.
Mhm.
So, anyways, I was able to travel a bunch, and that was like my first time really traveling. I kind of
Mhm.
traveled a bit as a kid, a little bit across
Mhm.
the U.S. like with family,
Mhm.
but I had
Mhm.
never properly been around Europe, and so
Mhm.
now definitely got the traveling bug from that. I would love
Yeah.
to travel more now that I'm hopefully like making some of my own money and can hopefully afford to in the future.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I live in New York right now, and so it's like super expensive. But like I try to travel like during like the winter months, and everybody's always like, "Hey, what are you doing?" Like somebody actually like DM me and was like, "Are you selling drugs?" And I was like, "No, no, 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 no." Like it's just cheap. It's just cheaper. It's cheaper to like leave New York.
Right, that's why. So yeah, I live actually like literally. I'm like 45 minutes from New York City, and that was
Oh
like
no
kind of
way,
where
cool.
I planned on. But like I'm saving money, living at home. I'm also like kind of a homebody, as you can tell. Like I'm like
Yeah,
literally
yeah.
in my mom's bed. She'll be home from work, and I'm like, let's go watch TV. We have our shows, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah, 100%. Wait, what are the go-to shows? What are the go-to shows that you guys have to
Oh
watch?
my god, like my mom and I have so many. It depends on like the season and time of year. Like
Got
we
it.
have like a bunch of our cable shows like Chicago Med, Chicago Fire, Grey's Anatomy. Right
Mm,
now we're watching this show called like we're doing like an older rerun of shows. Like
yeah.
we finished The Fosters. We just did this show called Banshee, Rogue. We're watching
Oh,
this show called C just came back on. We were super excited about. And last
yeah.
night, of course, we watched The Bachelorette. So
Nice, 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 nice.
yeah, we're kind of
That's
all
so
over the
amazing.
place. Everything from like Bravo TV to like really interesting like sci-fi thrillers, like For All
Yeah,
Mankind.
yeah,
So my mom and I
yeah.
watch a lot of good TV.
Nice, nice, nice. Yeah, I love like catching up. I feel like Grey's Anatomy is running for so long. Like I feel like Grey's Anatomy
Like,
could probably like drive
um,
now and get its like learner's permit by now.
yeah,
Like
yeah. I think I God, like that is such a hallmark. Because I was watching it when I was really little because my mom was
yeah,
watching it, and
yeah.
I'm like, I cannot believe like the show is running on. Like you look
This
back at old scenes of Meredith and you're like, oh my gosh, like
they were
make
babies.
babies. I was like, God, if I'm like getting sentimental over this.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. All right, cool. So you got the bug. You learned about Dow Jones in Ireland, and then last winter you said you created your account. What was that like? Because I feel like I might even like felt the ripple effects of you like joining. Like I feel like out of the corner of my like eye, I saw like, wait, who is this? And like your account was blowing up, right? So tell me
I
about that
feel
experience.
I feel confident in saying that that was like a crypto event. Like I feel like
Yeah,
the crypto timeline, as like this is probably pretty narcissistic of me to say, but like
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
gonna
No, no, I love it.
like it was a crypto event because
Mhm,
it was
mhm.
super random and unexpected. And so like the TLDR is that I just texted my brother and I was like, hey, and again, the reasons why I even joined a DAO were not even like super pure. I wasn't sitting here like I'm super devoted to centralization. I was sitting here, had spent what like all my freaking money from traveling in Europe, right? Those hostels and all that stuff, it starts to add up, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
I was staying at cheap hostels, but it was still adding up, right?
yeah.
So I was sitting here and I kind of went to school in Los Angeles, so it's a super expensive city as well. And I was like,
Mhm.
crap, like even my school job, I was like, this is not going to pay the bills. So I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
talking to
yeah.
my brother, and he was like, you know, you're a really good writer. You really like talking about like marketing. He's like, and
Mm,
I think you should learn about crypto. So
mm,
like, what a good way to force yourself to learn about crypto. Maybe like, try to go enter into a DAO and see if they need any help with writing and try to learn
mm,
about it and get
mm,
paid ideally.
mm.
So
Yeah,
that's what I did. I said, "Do you know of any DAOs?" And he asked a couple friends because he's not personally, my brother's not personally in DAOs,
yeah.
and someone recommended Index. Index
Got it,
Cooperative.
got it.
And so I just joined, and like one of my first pieces that I ever wrote for crypto, it was like my introduction to the cryptoverse. It's
Yeah,
still my biggest piece of advice to this day is like just introducing yourself. Because
yeah.
I feel like again, easier said than done for a lot of people and doesn't necessarily have the ripple effects it had for me.
Mm,
But it still stands that it could. You don't know the type of people, the type of effect they have on your life if you
yeah,
never
yeah, for
say
sure.
hi.
Mm-hmm,
And so I just went into the introductions channel and I was like, "Hi, my name is Regan. I'm a senior at USC. I don't know anything about crypto, like
mm-hmm,
seriously, but I'm just really excited to learn from you all and hopefully get to meet you all." And I
mm-hmm,
got an instant reply from someone named Kind Eagle who was like, "My brother went to USC, like that's super cool."
mm-hmm,
And he said something to me that like really changed everything. He's like, "Feel free to DM me if you want want advice on like who to talk to, right? And if you ever want to set up a video call." And that
mm-hmm,
was so helpful because DAOs are really confusing. Like if I am personally not super techy,
mm-hmm.
so besides like before this job, like my job right now, I've never used Slack, and I also
Yeah.
have like never used Discord.
Got it,
So
got it,
I
got
was
it.
like, thankfully he told me like the TLDR, like who's like running shit,
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. Top to
running.
bottom. Like these are the channels you need to be
Yeah,
in. Who's the people you need to talk
it's a
to?
DAO, but like who's running it? Like
Yeah, quick,
who's
give us a little bit of context too. Like, what does Index do? What were they
yeah,
focusing on?
of course. So
Yeah.
Index, the reason why I also joined Index, okay, so in finance, I worked in something like my interest, or really it was more like a forced interest, kind of where I
Mm,
got like put in for my internship, was in something called like financial derivatives.
cool.
And so I thought that that was super interesting. Like it's kind of this like weird kind of topic about like speculating and hedging on the market.
Mm,
And what's cool about Index is like very, very focused on like very tangential to that field, right? And
mm.
so it's a very finance DeFi, like finance heavy DAO
Yeah.
where they like launch different products and they even have like a DeFi index product, like Pulse, like all these really interesting things. And
Mm,
so I thought to myself, this could be really cool because it'll help me learn more about crypto in a finance context. I think
yeah.
everyone for learning about crypto needs to learn about it in their context.
Yeah.
And because
Because
I
there's
was
so
just
many
finding
different facets. There's so many different directions, and it doesn't make sense if you're like an art person to come in on like
it
the
would totally
finance side, or if you're like a VR person to come in on like the like I don't know
exactly.
NFT side. Yeah.
Because I was like, what the questions that intrigued me most is I'm like, how is this was regulatory, honestly. Like I was
Interesting.
super captivated by DeFi regulation and like, is it a commodity? Is it security? Like what's going on here?
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
what's
Super
like
gray area. Like, are we breaking the law? Like,
the moral, what's the ethics? Exactly. I'm like,
yeah.
because again, I was very like, and like still parts of me like pretty tradfi pilled, right? Like learned all
Mm-hmm.
about like the Great Recession. My family went through it, right? So like
Yeah,
very
for sure.
interested in like structured products and like how that's being integrated into DeFi because even I
Mm-hmm.
hadn't feelings about them in tradfi.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like my question that I ran with, and it got me
Yeah,
super integrated into like different finance DAOs. So that was like
yeah, yeah,
my thing.
yeah.
But
No, for sure.
anyways, yeah, that's Index, and the long story short is what Kind Eagle told me. I know it's so hilarious, like calling people. I think I like know his real name. Like sometimes forget it. Like
Yeah,
he has
I'm
his
pretty
real
sure like there's somebody in my like official work Slack that's like just called like Trippy Fits, and like I
yeah
have to like deliver a report to them. Like it's
yeah
super weird working in the
yeah
space.
yeah. It's like ridiculous, and I didn't know that, so I was like fully freaking doxxed with like my face, and I realized like pretty quickly I'm like, that's weird. But I also couldn't
Yeah,
really go back.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
so
yeah,
I
yeah.
like entered into this space fully doxxed, not even intentionally, because I didn't know like that was not a thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, anyways, um,
That's so
what
funny.
what Kind Eagle told me was like, feel free to like set up a call with me, and that's what did it. I did it that day, set up a call with him, and then with also with the young Cruz, who's also like one of my really good friends in the
I
space
feel like
and
I've heard that name before. Yeah,
yeah, Cruz is very into like music NFTs, and so all
yeah,
these
yeah, yeah.
people who are in these DAOs into like super different things. Like Kind Eagle, like in his past life was like a podiatrist, so I'm
His
like,
past life. It also sounds like a Native American ceremony. Like Kind Eagle
yeah,
showed me the way, and then
I
like,
know it's very like and I love it is like if you were hearing that, you'd be like, what kind of that's interesting. I'd be like, what
in
kind of
his
it sounds a bit spiritual. You're like,
yeah,
what?
in his past reincarnation. Yeah.
It is. It is a bit like, and people are listening to it like, and I think that's what I kind of love about
Mhm.
DAOs in this culture because like when you dive into anything, when you're hearing it from the outside, like for example, when people maybe hear about like really beautiful Native American rituals, they're like, "Wait, that's a lot of words I don't understand." And like maybe it's like a false comparison to try to then compare that to DAOs. Really, anything in life where that people don't understand or where
Yeah.
they have their own language or their own
Yeah.
culture. I think that like it's very let's get away from like the Native American thing. Let's say like makeup guru, beauty gurus.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
beauty have their entire different subject culture.
Yeah.
And that's something that one of my best friends is into, where she's like, I'm
Mhm.
baking my face and I'm like, and it's just like the way that they talk is like not
Yeah,
English.
there's serums, there's like things that
Yeah,
like there's like toners that they're doing.
they have their whole thing. And so I think
Yeah.
it's super cool. Like I think that DAOs and just Web3 culture can be very culturally rich. Obviously, there are a lot of interesting problems as well that we face that are both like systemic and whatever. But I
Yeah,
think
for sure.
I've really appreciated like just this little world. And one of the funniest things that I get to explain to people is that yeah, I speak to people on a daily basis, and I've gotten like paid to like write articles, etc. by people who like have like the most silly names or like I don't even know what they look like.
Yeah, yeah,
And like that,
100%.
I've actually thought that that's been really fun.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think there's something interesting about sort of like the anonymous culture and the way that it breaks down barriers. Like, there's something to be said about bringing everyone to the same like level of equality. But then in Web3, there's almost like not an option to discriminate because you don't know what anybody looks like, you don't know where anybody's background is, and it's like, hey, you all end up on the same like sort of like flat stage. You know what I'm saying? Like,
It is super interesting, right? Because like we have to like because like when you think about like I guess like the real world, I hate that term. My parents use it all the time, and it's like
come back to the real world.
right, come
Yeah.
back to the real world. What's super interesting is like, for example, like as a woman in Web3,
Hmm.
um, there's been like a lot of my friends, like multiple of my friends have like been like, even though like I personally could like tell immediately that they were a woman, even though they're not doxxed, are approached like, hey man, what's going on? And then they're like, they have to mention like they like somehow it comes out and they're like, you're a freaking girl,
Yeah,
like
yeah, it
like
will.
so I definitely think there's a lot of beautiful and also like very interesting like
Yeah.
it not I wouldn't say issues, but different like aspects to like this idea of like this like one slate of person that has
Hmm.
been both very powerful for a community, but also pretty destructive, which is really interesting and like definitely something very Web3 because like there's very few places in the world where you can really abstract away your identity like you can in Web3.
Yeah, no, no, for sure, for sure. And I think there's also to your point before about there being like a sort of a cultural bubble and there's words and there's like nomenclature and there's things that people discuss within that that aren't really as well understood outside. I think that there's something about magic about like when you get inside because the bubble like inside the bubble like time moves faster. Like a week in Web3 is like a month outside of it. But I feel like it's tough sometimes for people to like get into that bubble, right? There's a
Yeah.
very much insider outsider culture, and even when like, did you see? I don't know if you saw the Reddit post today. People were talking about how like, oh, they didn't like having the NFTs as their profile pictures, but they like kind of still think it's cool. And like somebody who just joined Reddit was like, hey, what are NFTs and why do we all hate them? Like,
Yeah.
there's like sort of like a cult like vibe about it that is like turning people off, even though they kind of like are interested in the products and the possibilities.
You know, you know what I realized
Hmm.
before? It's like I think I'm kind of gullible isn't the word, but I definitely think I am a person who like I'm very information heavy because I love following like
Mm.
a bunch of political TikTokers and like honestly I
Hmm.
spend too much of my free time on the internet. And so I really what is super interesting is that I had prior to being like introduced to Web3 by my brother and then through by the other like people who helped onboard me with the DAO and then my Twitter, knew really nothing. I couldn't describe like anything about Bitcoin or even like the difference between Ethereum. Nothing, right?
Yeah,
Like on a
for
scale
sure.
of 1 to 10, it was a less than one.
Yeah.
But I did know about this discourse around Bitcoin, primarily Bitcoin, but really all cryptocurrencies being really environmentally destructive.
Yeah,
And I think that's
sure.
like and while not taking away or diminishing that point, it's super interesting how like that has been like a very forefront leading talking point, but it never was like enough for me to dive into nor try to understand. It
Hmm.
was more like, oh, that's like something I just kind of had very subconsciously that I think was kind of very negative about the space. And even still, like, I think I'm very proud of like the work that I do and I love it.
Hmm.
But I don't think it can be kind of hard, or sometimes I feel like I may be defending myself a bit when I tell people like, oh, I work in crypto. Can I use the word crypto because Web3 is a bit more like still vernacular for people? Like
Yeah,
I had
yeah,
just learned what Web3 was like right before I even joined crypto.
yeah, yeah.
I barely knew it. So, you know what I mean? And I still kind of feel a little bit more like on the defensive, way more
Yeah.
than I did when like I was like, oh, I work at a bank and I do
Yeah.
this.
For sure, for sure. I think that when it comes to like the energy concerns, it all comes back to like whether you see value and whether you see it impacting people's
Yes.
lives. You know what I'm saying? There's so many different things that we use energy on in the world. And I think that I believe in a future not where we're using less energy, but we're using more energy in a more clean way, right? Like
Mhm.
we're like I don't expect my kids to be like trying to start fires with like rocks and stuff like that. I expect them to be like flying supercars. It's just going to be all like powered by water or something. You know, I expect them to be the world to be more consumptive. And I think if and I think the problem is that when people hear that like people are burning, I don't know, like three Amazon rainforests a day to power the Bitcoin network, and they think that Bitcoin's useless, then it's like, okay, obviously this is silly. But if you see people like using Bitcoin to escape like refugee situations or to conserve wealth in places where there's like a really rapid inflation issue, and you're saying, hey,
Yeah.
like, is that a valuable use of energy? It's like that's when you can start weighing it and you start thinking about it. But I think it comes from the use cases and comes from the values and comes from being inside the community and seeing people put in the work. You know?
I completely agree. I think you
Yeah.
you hit the nail on the head. It's a value situation. Like
Yeah.
it's so much less actually about energy because when you actually compare like the energy, like there's so many more things that use like a tremendous amount of energy. It's
Yeah.
more just the idea of value.
Yeah.
And I think it's very easy to write off crypto. And honestly, a lot of things in crypto, and I can't necessarily disagree that like may not be value per se, but also
Mhm.
like yeah, like what constitutes a moral way to expend energy is like such an
Yeah.
interesting idea, and I think it
Yeah.
all comes back to value.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. When I was in school, I studied cognitive science with like concentrations in linguistics and behavioral economics, and so there are a lot of questions about like trade-offs and moral ethics and
Yeah.
all these things. And so I've always been interested in sort of those conversations and figuring out like how we can get people to understand them better and then like discuss them more efficiently. But I would love to hear your thoughts on sort of the benefit strength of like the TradFi system, and then like what might be possible weaknesses, and then like sort of the same for crypto. Like what made you fall in love with TradFi, and where do you think like crypto has like sort of a wedge to improve things?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always find my journey into finance quite interesting because I think I've actually always been very envious of people who have a really big passion for something.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of stumbled a bit ass backwards into finance. I honestly, when I was applying to schools, I was like, okay, business is like, yeah. I grew
Yeah,
up in like a town where people were incredibly privileged, and looked at like everyone, and all the dads had like majored in finance, and I was like, okay,
that
and then I
yeah.
didn't really know what I wanted. And then I all of a sudden my school was very ABC focused. That's like accounting, banking, consulting, and you kind of just get really quickly siloed. And I defined just a lot of my self worth off of like the internship that I could get or
Mm-hmm,
the
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Marshall, that's like the subset, Marshall like clubs I could get into.
Got it.
And so I think I like fell in love with like finance or like at least with learning about the financial system in a strange way. It wasn't like, oh,
Mm-hmm,
I'm an artist and I have a passion. It was more kind of backwards.
mm-hmm,
But I think what I realized with finance is that I realized that it impacts so much more of the world that I really had any idea about for two reasons. One, I was young, like a child, like, but then also the idea that like it's super abstracted. And I think by being around finance people my entire upbringing, it was actually very like put in front of me. But I
mm-hmm,
actually was dating someone when I was in college whose
mm-hmm.
family was like very who's like more low income area, and really they had like no concept of like anything from the financial system.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of made me start thinking about like the inaccessibility issues and the
Mm-hmm,
questions around that.
mm-hmm,
Though I didn't really have an avenue to explore it per se in college or really in my internships.
mm-hmm,
um, Fast forward to learning about DeFi,
mm-hmm,
I think, and I've even spoken about this a bit like on my timeline, is I'm not even completely decentra pilled. I
I think I
think
saw that tweet. Yeah.
I think I think learning about it, I think I am in a lot of ways, and I also recognize like my understanding of probably decentralization is dwarfed compared to
Mm-hmm,
people who the brilliant people who have been here for like DeFi Summer and like all these people who have like really been innovating in the space. But I think when I think about decentralization, I realize like I look at my own history, like my brother and myself, and like how
mm-hmm.
we've been able to build wealth for ourselves when we wouldn't have been able to under like a lot of current investor standards
Yeah.
in like traditional finance, and just how siloed and how gatekeepy it is,
Mm-hmm,
and how like so many this idea of trade-offs, right, has been really profound for me to try to understand. Like there is a trade-off decentralization has a trade-off of the fact that people who do not understand things will have access to them, and what's the moral and ethical implications of allowing someone to partake in a product that they may be able to harm themselves with. I mean, we've seen when structured products were like really more widely available, we had like those issues in like Korea. Think about like 2008, right? But then you think about like, well, who actually has the opportunity, who has the right to tell someone what they can and cannot do. So that's been something I've really been focusing on with DeFi, and I've been
Yeah.
finding super interesting.
Yeah.
Also, I work at a company where like that product that like we I talk about a lot like on the Twitter, like I legally like cannot trade in the US. So I'm more and like, yeah, really interesting. It's not something that as a US, yeah. So that's also super interesting. And the idea of like, what do I think about that? Like, how come someone who lives in Germany can?
Yeah.
Like, it's super interesting to look into this idea of like getting like uh, these types of products and financial vehicles. So
Yeah.
it's been really exciting, and I just know for sure that I'm way happier now than I was in my last job,
Yeah.
and I really hope to hopefully develop that nuance I have within myself through thoughtful conversations with people
Mhm.
about the moral and ethical consequences slash perks of decentralization.
100%. Yeah, I think that balance and like not getting completely just like 100%, 110% into crypto is like really important because like you should never just be super gung ho. You should be able to be critical. You should be able to be thinking about these things. So many of the things you just said like prompted ideas in my head. First off, the idea about having sort of products available in other countries and not having them available in the United States. Do you think we're losing like our best and finest to like other countries to go innovate? Do you think United States is like giving itself like a strategic like disadvantage by not like participating fully, or do you think we're doing a better job of protecting our citizens?
This is such an interesting question. Actually, I think goes way beyond crypto, right? I mean, like when we even have these questions about like taxing corporations, right? Like the impeding threat of leaving. Like for example, my home state is Connecticut, and Connecticut is a Democratic blue state. We have higher taxes, and we also shockingly our capital is like a huge like insurance capital, like Hartford, Connecticut, and so a bunch of like insurance companies were I think leaving Hartford, Connecticut because of like the tax rate, and so
Mm,
there's like this huge question of like, well, what do you do, right? And so this question is really interesting because it goes way beyond crypto. Like
mm-hmm,
certain things, like when you have something in place and then something comes up like that threatens like the security of like your state or like the income of your state, you have
yeah.
to kind of ask yourself like, what do we value, right? Oh, this was working, but now it's not working because now people are trying to leave. So what do we value when it
Everybody's
comes
different.
when it comes to the US? That's interesting. So I think particularly like for example like this token like that the company I work for like works on is considered like technically considered a derivative, and it could be so that's why
Mm,
it's like blocked in the US,
mm-hmm,
but not like for example in other states. And so
mm-hmm,
here's the thing, like it's very hard to still regulate like things like crypto though, and I think I'm proud of the United States government for trying to like take a look at it because I think it's not something that can be ignored. um, but I think I've definitely gone more on the spectrum of thinking that I don't think people should be blocked from it. I i wish I could like force people to listen to a crash course in derivatives and like
yes, exactly.
important about them, but I can't. And so that's been something super hard for me to reckon with, is
Yeah.
because especially this past year after seeing like the whole like anchor situation with like Terra Luna and people losing like so much money, I like probably should have known better. But I was curious. And listen, I came from like trad files. Like I've never heard of like
Yeah.
like a yield of that. Like that doesn't make sense. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
APR.
Yeah.
And
All
even
my
I
like
was like,
finance friends were like,
and even I was like, but it's DeFi, it's different. And I'm super glad I
yeah,
had friends to be like, do not put your freaking money in that. Like,
yeah.
it's basically Ponzi. Like, it's like, and to, sorry, my dog moved my computer. She's like stretching out.
It's all
To
good.
like teach me about like what an algorithmic stable coin is. And I look back to that moment and I felt like, I'm so glad I had those friends, but I almost felt kind of upset that I even had like, and this is all personal, right? That I even had the option to put some of my net worth in there because it would have all tanked. And
Mm-hmm.
I felt lucky and I couldn't describe it. It's like, how come I got to be lucky? and other people
Mm-hmm.
didn't. And
Yeah.
it's that question of like people will say, well, people had all the information. I'm like, yeah, but not everyone can really understand it. Like you could say, well,
Yeah.
it's an algorithmic stable coin. I'm like, what the hell does that if before I got into crypto and even now still, I'm like, what the fuck does that really mean? You know? So I I think I come at it from a
Yeah.
very human level where I think
Mm-hmm.
it, like got into my head, I'm way more on the side of decentralization than centralization. But these issues of wanting to hold someone's hand and wanting to protect someone because knowing that people will be hurt if they have
Mm-hmm.
access to certain things is also very strong and very real for me. And
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
it's something I
Mm-hmm.
personally just been grappling with in the space.
Yeah.
Like like you want people to have access to possibly creating generational wealth, but you also want to protect people. It's a trade-off.
Yeah, for sure. Because that's the only way people really do get wealthy. You know, what I'm saying you can't just get out of like extreme poverty just like just through salary and like through savings. You need to invest. You need to own things. You need to have money that like works when you're not working.
I think especially in these other countries when we talk about like for example there's like a lot of great conversation happening around these like metaverse games and like what are they
Hmm.
doing like is it like what's and for
Like
a lot
Axie
of people
Infinity and
yeah like Axie Infinity people might say like well these people like again you could there's definitely a lot of nuance here so I don't want to like butcher the nuance in it but
yeah, no
a lot
worries.
of people are choosing like in the Philippines to play Axie Infinity. I think now it's really interesting because I know like there's been like certain crashes and stuff but at least when like I
Mm,
was looking into it it's like people actively choosing to do that instead of a job like giving them that optionality like and letting them have that choice is very interesting
mhm.
and not necessarily something like that I should be able to take away from them
Yeah.
so just super interesting like how like certain things have been more accessible for people than other parts of crypto.
Yeah, I feel like I like your crash course idea because what I was gonna say up front was like I believe mostly in like transparency, right? The
Yeah.
biggest thing is when people are like hiding things or hiding risk or not assessing risk properly, and then not making sure that their customers like understand that. But I've also heard people say that like, okay, you should be able to either be a certified investor or take some sort of like certification quiz if you're underneath like the like the salary requirements and still be able to participate in these systems. And I think that would probably be like a smart way to handle it. But I think
Yeah.
that also when it comes back to balance, and we were talking about value versus like the and like energy we burned before. I think another balance that I think about is like, sure, you might want to protect people from those things, but when you think about the things that we allow people to do in the country today, like we allow them to smoke cigarettes. Like there's no like potential. You're not gonna get generally generationally wealthy off of cigarettes or gambling, maybe. But like we
If
allow
it
people to throw money at slots.
what's so hard is like
Yeah.
I think it's weird because like honestly I if I could make cigarettes illegal, I think I would. Like, let's say I had a magic wand, I think I freaking would. And
Yeah.
that's super interesting because it's like, who am I? And I said, like, it's not like nobody, like, listen, it's a little different when my grandmother was smoking cigarettes. Like, she's old. She had, like, old, and that was like back in the day where they really had no idea.
yeah.
Like, that's different and that's super deceptive and super shitty.
Mm.
But there's this idea, right? Like this idea of like not being able to like people know the risk, but they think it doesn't apply to themselves. And like obviously doctors are
Yeah.
sitting here like it obviously applies to you,
Yeah. For sure.
bitch. And I feel like and even though this is probably a very anti-decentralization take,
yeah.
um, is like I really do I also felt this about the vaccine. Sorry, not to pivot, but
Yeah. Yeah. No
I
worries. Go. Go.
laying there and thinking to myself like about people who are anti-vax. I'm like, if I had like a button that could get everyone vaccinated, like that could like safely be vaccinated, they weren't like allergic to it,
Yeah.
and even if like in their sleep, like, and this is like a violation of bodily autonomy. Like I
Regan,
read
Regan
when I
says she wants to sneak into people's houses and give them shots.
when I walk it back, I'm like, this is really like I don't
It's
actually
crazy, but
think.
you know what you but I know what you mean. Like it's like this is a public safety thing, and it's
Yeah,
so frustrating. But at
right.
the same
It's
time, like
frustrating.
I don't
Yes.
want anybody to like. I hear you completely. Like
So
it's
I
such
mean,
a
what if, especially like it really came to light with me with the
yeah
abortion issues,
yeah.
where I think like for a decent amount of my life, I think I've always kind of been on the side of like I don't really care if the government has information on me because like I think I kind of grew up, I grew up very very like
We
to
grew up post like 9/11. Like it's just like
I
we're
grew up
used to
with
just like
9/11.
surveillance and
I
yeah.
grew, my middle school actually went into lockdown when Sandy Hook happened because like we were very close to that elementary school,
Oh
and
my
so
god.
like I grew up like yeah, and then of course a
So
couple people in my
you're a
grade.
child actor. I'm joking.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Oh my god. Oh my god.
I'm joking.
So
I'm joking. I'm joking.
I know so
That's so
bad.
bad.
Tales of like the Alex Jones getting sued, his alcohol thing.
Oh god.
Yeah.
And his
Um,
lawyer sending the entire like synopsis to the other guy. I'm like, bro, can you get it together?
that was so good. That was so good. So
Anyway, go
I
go.
think, yeah, I think I grew up, and also just like hearing a lot about like this like school shooting. I think I grew up like very much like afraid and thinking like I don't really care. I have nothing to hide. What like some sketchy search histories. I'll do that any day over the fact that like terrorists or both domestic and abroad.
Mhm.
I want them to be caught. I want to be safe. And because I remember there was a time when like I definitely had a lot of heightened anxiety like being in like school and like
Yeah, no, for
even being out
sure.
in public. And
Yeah.
so I think that's kind of flipped though a little bit as like I've started to realize that I can go the other way. Where I'm like, I don't really have
Hmm.
anything to hide, but I'm like, I'm also super, I will till the day I die realize that like want abortions to be both safe and legal for anyone
Yeah.
who needs them because I realize like they don't go away. They just becomes people who
Becomes unsafe. It just becomes
becomes
like
unsafe. And again,
yeah.
people can disagree with me, which is fine, and I'm gonna sit here and be like, I know I'm right. But I realized that that's kind of made me rethink the safety and privacy thing a ton because I'm like, well, let's say someone else had that button where like no one could ever get a safe and legal abortion, like and they believe that so truly. Like the people
That's
who
the
are
biggest
pro-life
part. Yeah.
believe so truly, and that always kind of fucks me up because I'm like, I always it makes me question my beliefs, which I think is healthy. Like
Yeah.
I'm sitting here and I'm like, the things that I believe so truly, are they true? Because I see people who
100%.
believe things so truly that like I would say, you're crazy. No offense,
Yeah.
you're fucking
Yeah, no,
crazy.
100%. Yeah, they believe in their heart of hearts that they're doing not even like the thing that's like on the right side, but like the moral thing. Like they feel like they're doing the thing that they must do. Like it's their duty. And
Yeah,
the same thing on like on our side. And it's like and the part that's tough is that like that's what a democracy is. Like you can't take away people's voices, you can't take away people's right to try to I guess enforce their beliefs through like votes, you know what I'm saying? But like I don't know, it's so tough.
it is tough. That's the idea of like censorship, right? Because I also mentioned in that thread that I am kind of in some ways very kind of pro censorship, right? Like
Mm,
being
100%.
like a visible as like a Jewish woman, I've definitely like had my taste of like, anti-Semites,
Mm,
misogynists, whatever. And I'm like, I vehemently oppose like any views that are racist, xenophobic, misogynistic,
mm,
Islamophobic,
mm.
whatever. The whole run, right? Because there's way too many isms and ists to go on.
Yeah.
But and if I could, right, wave a little wand, like all of those would be immediately censored because I think that like that should not be spread to especially young kids. Like after hearing about Andrew Tate, that was really interesting. Like
Andrew
how
Tate,
he,
like getting popped off.
yeah. And I was watching this video of this like sixth grade teacher who was saying that a couple of boys in her class were like regurgitating things that Andrew Tate was saying, like real men do work, women are just meant to kind of like are lazy, and these are 11-year-olds. So it's like you haven't even been soured by the world yet. You're like you haven't worked a day in your life.
Wait till
You
you wait wait till your first heartbreak. Wait till
paid a bill. And it's like it's the fact, but we are so easily influenced, and so and like
hmm
children
hmm
are, and like I'm not gonna
people
lie,
are a product of their environments too.
yeah,
Like a lot of
are.
people who like who believe things that are on opposing sides grew up
Yeah,
surrounded by like I sometimes think about like racism in this world and I'm like how many black people does this person know, like you know what I'm saying, like how many people do they grow up with, because you get so much out of being exposed to people and like
you
having
do.
sort of like conversations, and you get so much more openness when you have like access to like more culture, you know. And so
That was a light bulb moment for me. I think
yeah.
my exposure because I when I was a teenager, I was able to like do this like summer school like program for
Hmm.
like it's like a nerd program, and I that was
Yeah.
the first time in my life where I was like, oh fuck, I'm not around any non-white people. Oh,
Yeah.
what the fuck? I was in a friend group, and I, as a white person, was like the minority, like the one of the only like white people, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh wait, so it's actually weird as fuck that my town is like 95% white. Like that's
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah. For
And
sure.
so again, like you say, like people being that's why I honestly again with education, people become more liberal when they go to college because they're exposed to more different ideas, etc.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean that was I look every time that I explore the world more and both like on a personal level and become more of like a global thinker, it has made me just an infinitely better person. So even
Hmm.
when I hope honestly, I mean things we talked about I think probably won't change, but I guess I hope in a couple of years if I keep doing like podcast stuff that I look back and
Hmm.
like cringe at some of the stuff I say. So hopefully I'll even
Yeah.
be even more worldly and like maybe I won't, or maybe I'll just have way more nuanced takes on it. But
Hmm.
I recognize I'm like I'm 22. I'm not saying I had like the most diverse upbringing at all. And so it's like
Yeah,
I
for
have
sure.
so much to learn and I'm
Yeah,
excited to learn it. And I think crypto has been a really cool place to learn about people and their identities, even though a lot
yeah.
of that has also been distracted at times.
Cool, cool, cool. Awesome. Yeah, so after Kind Eagle sort of ran you through the rundown, when did you decide to, had you already made your account, and when did you make that like first splash? When it was like the Twitter
Yeah,
event that like I remember?
gosh, yeah, going all the way back to that. So I I was actually in my call with Cruise or Kind Eagle. They're both on the same day. It was December 15th of
Mm,
2021. I remember the date.
cool, cool, cool.
And I just created a Twitter account and I had four followers. One was like Cruise, Kind Eagle, and I think like two other people from
Mhm.
Index. And I just posted this really like silly tweet where I was like, "Hey, how come posting a tweet on like your first tweet on Twitter is so awkward? Like, at least I have a couple followers and they're in Web3, so that's cool." Like, really, it was not coherent. Now
Yeah,
I look back, I'm like, that wasn't even a good tweet format. Like, that was stupid. And Cruz actually stumbled across it hours later, had zero likes, obviously, because I had four freaking followers. And he retweeted it and then sent it, DM'd it to some people, being like, "Hey, I met this girl. Like, we had a call. She's super cool. I think it'd be super. You should follow her." And I
yeah.
think people just resonated with the tweet because it was like really vulnerable. I was just talking about how exposed and awkward I feel tweeting for the first time because I was like, it was also my first Twitter account, and I felt like super. Oh my god, I'm tweeting for the first time, and it
Do
was
you
like
have a
kind of
favorite social media platform? Like, what's your favorite that you use?
what's you the one where I don't post, and it's TikTok.
Nice,
I
interesting,
really like depersonalized myself. Like it's super interesting. Aside from Twitter, I actually don't actively post on any social media platform.
interesting. That's so
Yeah,
interesting. All right, cool,
I
cool,
know,
cool.
super interesting. So I like love, but I love TikTok because I think that's where I actually like learn and it makes me laugh and I can get
Mhm.
lost in it for way too long. It's definitely
Yeah,
like a
same.
problem sometimes.
I
But
love when they send you one of those like, get off TikTok, like
I
TikToks, and I'm like, leave me
I
alone, and I'm like, it's like,
I
okay.
like I recognize all those bitches' faces now. I'm like, bye. Like, they don't even have the chance. They don't even have the chance to get a word out of their mouth. I'm like,
Stop
I know
judging me. Get out of
who
here.
I know what they fucking look like. I know what they're back.
Yeah.
I know everything. I see it out of like the corner of my eye, and I'm just like
Yeah.
in a haze. Like I don't give a fuck. I don't give a
Yeah.
fuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I posted that tweet, and I woke up the next morning. I didn't even check Twitter, right? Like because I obviously wasn't even thinking about it. And then I go actually to an index cooperative meeting. It was like a 10 a.m. meeting, and I think Kind Eagle said, "Oh, you should come to this. It's business development. That's where you'll meet like the people that do a bunch of stuff in Index, and you'll see if you
Mhm.
like it." And again, this was winter break, so I was very privileged to just have like the freedom of time to attend a 10 a.m.
Yeah.
meeting. Winter
Nice.
break, right? I just gotten back from Vienna before I was going back to LA. I had time. I had time on my
Yeah.
hands,
Time to burn.
and I was just at the meeting and I get like a DM on Discord from Kind Eagle. He's like, "Have you checked your Twitter?" I'm like, "No." And he's like, "You have 300 followers." And I checked and I had 312 followers, and my tweet had like 1,000 likes, something crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, "Who are all these freaking people?" Because I had never expected, nor even actually really wanted to be. Now I love it. It's
Yeah.
like kind of actually part of my identity.
Yeah.
But I was never, the plan was never like be an influencer. The plan was like post dumb stuff on Twitter to make my friends laugh, but
Right.
just follow a bunch of accounts. Like I think I
Mm.
followed like Vitalik. Like I was going as service level as possible. I was like, Binance. Like who am I
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah.
follow? You know?
Binance. It's
Like I
crazy.
was just like I didn't
Yeah.
know. I just like
Yeah.
looked
No,
at
for
people
sure.
I
I love it.
followed and I was like the Binance dude,
Yeah.
Vitalik,
Yeah. Yeah.
Index. Like I was just gonna I
Ethereum
was
Foundation. Yeah.
everyone told me yes. Everyone told me like this is how you learn. Like you just go
Hmm.
crypto Twitter is where you learn. And I'm like, I guess I need to find it, so I'll just
Hmm.
follow it.
Yeah, for sure.
And that just all spiraled where I kind of developed a following. I started tweeting more, got like insane traction.
Yeah.
Um, People reaching out to me just to, and like I remember at the time, like I had no appreciation for like the gravity of the people that were reaching out to me, like really big hitters at like super huge DeFi protocols, like commenting, and I
No.
had no idea. I'm like, what's Aave? Like, what's Uniswap? Like, I had no idea. And I look back at like some of these people I blatantly freaking ignored, who I would like kill to speak to today. And I'm
Yeah.
like,
You completely curved them. You were like,
oh,
yeah, I'm
fuck.
just chill.
I was like, "I don't give a fuck." Yeah, I don't give a fuck. Like, there's only so many comments you can like when you're having a
Yeah,
viral
no,
moment.
100%.
And
Yeah.
I look, and even some of the people I became friends with, I'm like, "Wait, you're actually a big fucking deal." Like, I had no
Yeah.
idea, because a lot of them don't have big Twitter profiles, and I'm like, "Wait a minute, you're, like, actually a genius and have been involved in crypto for, like, 5 years. Like, this is
Yeah,
really
yeah.
crazy to me."
Yeah, yeah,
So,
100%.
that was, like, a big part of my experience was just realizing, like, people I was talking to were, like, not necessarily, like, 22-year-olds in college, but, like, really brilliant, or some of them were even younger, but just
Yeah.
really brilliant, really established people, and I had,
Yeah.
like, no freaking idea. I think about that
That's
a lot.
awesome. And so, how soon after you started building a following did you realize that, like, hey, this might be something? Like, did you immediately think like, hey, this might be something, or did you immediately like start looking for jobs? Like, when did it like start picking up steam, and you're like, hey, this might be a path for me?
Yeah. So, I actually had that summer, when I did my internship, had accepted a job offer for a full-time job offer.
Oh,
So I had accepted a full-time job offer in New York, like at this bank, working on that desk. And
nice.
I knew
Okay.
I didn't like it, but I
Mhm.
never could have in a million years ever thought like I could quit, nor my parents would ever let me. Yes, I'm an adult, but like, like my
Yeah.
parents, like I cried when like I remember when I got the internship because I was like so big for me because it was like
Yeah.
a really established bank and I had only done okay in school. I really kind of struggled in college and like with like getting into really good clubs. So
Mhm.
when I got into one of the most prestigious internships you can get, I was
You're
like,
like, let's go, let's fucking go.
"Fuck these bitches," right? Like, oh my god, this is so bad. Like, I took immediately to LinkedIn. Like, I'm so vain. I was
Yeah.
like, like I'm right on it. Like, it told everyone. Everyone was like, "What the yeah,
I'm honored to announce.
oh yeah," and then like incoming, like yeah, like like on my like, oh my god, I was horrible. It
I
was
love
horrible.
it. I love it. I love
It was
it.
horrible. Like took a new like LinkedIn. I mean, like really, I was like
Yeah, new
doing it.
headshots. Let's do
Yeah,
it.
exactly. It was exactly how I felt when I got into USC because I also felt like a huge underdog for getting into
Yeah, that's
USC.
awesome. That's super cool.
Just
Congratulations, by the way.
reliving that moment of like feeling like, oh my god, like super validating. So,
Yeah, like I'm popping.
but I again, I didn't like love the work to be honest. It was
Yeah,
exhausting. I was in the office every day.
yeah.
It wasn't the
And
most like
first year finance is like even worse, right? Like the
yeah,
MDs, like please fix,
definitely,
like
yeah, definitely like very food chain esque. A lot of first in, last out kind of culture, whatever.
Mm,
So I just remember but I was not thinking about anything full time. People coming up to me that first week and being like, "This is something." Like your Twitter experience is something. I knew it was super rare. Like, why the heck do I have more followers than the people that even gave me shout outs in the beginning after the first
yeah,
week? Like, I was already in like the thousands. I was like, what the heck?
yeah.
And I quickly realized like it was something. I just didn't know what. And I also never knew like I was like, what am I gonna post? What am I gonna write about? I was like, I remember I was so stressed out. Like I was like, oh my god, what am I gonna
All these
do?
people are looking at me
Um,
now. Like, what do I like? Start tap dancing? It's like,
like I vividly remember like this is right before my ex and I broke up, and it was like
mm,
right in like really early January before I went back to school.
mhm,
And I remember like we were hanging out and like I was just and it's kind of unlike me to be on my phone a lot or I
mhm.
try, sometimes I get distracted, but I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
just so glued to it because I was getting so many notifications and I was like, what's a mirror article? I need to make a mirror like and I was being intro to really powerful women in the space like Chase Chapman, Gabby Goldberg, who I kind of wanted to follow in their footsteps where I realized I've been blessed with this following. I might as well do something with it. And I really quickly realized I wanted to do that because I was getting job offers in my DMs. People were like, "Do you want to like write for?" I was like, "Do you need?" I'm like, "Do you want to like see my resume?" He's like,
do you
"Yeah."
want to
I'm
see like my transcript or like what's going?
like, you know, like who I am as a person. Like, how do you? And I knew it was definitely something special when everyone like thought I was like a fed. Like a lot of people, like people who I'm now friends with, thought I was like a bot or a fed.
You thought
They're
they thought you were like an industry plant,
yeah,
like
they did, like, straight up because they were like, "Is this, like, a hack? Like, how did you, like, get all these followers? Like, this is not a real woman. Like, this is a LARP." And I'm like, "What are you" I'm, like, Googling these words. I'm like, "What the fuck? Like, what do they think I'm doing?" I was like there was,
that's
like, a day where I was, like, trying to brainstorm, like, how do I appear normal? Like, so stupid.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I feel
They're,
you.
like, not and I would, like, say, like, I'm not a fed, which I guess is like, "Oh, you're such a fucking
Textbook Fed
fed."
Fed comment.
Like, should I like say I'm a fed? And like I think that actually is less sus. But I'm like, yeah, I'm a fed. I
But I
remember
had
like
Fed cap on. Yeah.
one day being like, I'm like so stressed out about it. It's like my first week. I was like, I'm like stressed out. Like people are like sending me hate in my DMs. It was so stupid.
Oh, poor thing.
It was so stupid, but it was really funny. And so
Yeah.
looking back, it was like I hate like this is super cliche. Like it
No
kind of
worries.
like chose me. It was just like
Mm,
the algorithm chose me. I got super freaking lucky. A cosmic turn of events, my friend blasting me up, people resonating with the message. I think being a doxxed woman helped, and I'm okay with
mhm,
admitting that.
mhm.
Um, and I also think like it's just been such a great outlet for my creativity. It almost feels like this is probably like it looks like something I've been working to for a while,
Yeah,
but honestly, I just had like a following kind of dropped into my lap. Of
yeah.
course, I've had lapses. Like, don't get me wrong, I'll never have my engagement that I had those first couple weeks. That was insane. More people were on crypto Twitter. We have to wait for the next
I
people
love
to run.
seeing your tweets. You're like, "Where's everybody? What's going on? What's popping?" Like,
I'm like, so y'all got me addicted to dopamine, to the dopamine that Twitter likes
yeah,
are,
like
and then
where?
you leave. Like, that's not that's not
It's
fair.
like, yeah, it's
So
like,
I
well,
was pissed. I was like, no way. So it's just been really fun. I honestly just like I had like a bunch of different renditions, like learning in public and all that stuff. Now that I have a job, it's been a bit less focused on that. I've been a bit more focused on like literally just like straight memeing. Probably will
mhm,
get back
mhm.
to more like educational stuff because I do really love that.
Yeah,
But a lot of it have just been I've decided like at least for while I'm working and like getting adjusted to my job, I'm like I'm just gonna have so much fun with it. And so I post like really stupid shit mostly. Like I would say like it's like 90% like really dumb memes and like sayings, and then
yeah.
10% like something educational will like show up in there.
No, I feel
So
you. I feel you.
but it's been really fun. I
Yeah.
honestly I love my Twitter. It makes me really happy. I've made like
Mhm,
really good friends, even if I've never met them or necessarily know like their names. Actually, a lot of my friends are docs, which is interesting, but even a lot that are not. It's been just really exciting, and I've been very
mhm,
very lucky.
mhm, mhm, mhm. What is so? Tell me a little bit. What does Open do, and what do you officially do for them?
Yeah, so Open is a DeFi native protocol that's mission is to make DeFi open and accessible to everyone.
Mhm,
And so they've had like a huge journey before I joined. It was started by three Berkeley dropouts who all like just started it, and they were gonna maybe do insurance at first, and then they kind of landed on like infrastructure. So they built something called
mm,
like the Gamma contract, which is a set of smart contracts. If you're familiar with Ribbon or Stake DAO, those are built
mhm.
on top of that. And
Yeah.
then they in 2022, the start of it, launched Squeeze, which is a squared ETH. That's like a token,
Ah,
an
cool.
ERC20 that tracks like squared ETH exposure. People can go long it, people can go short it, you can LP it. It's super cool. So I primarily like deal with Squeeze and Squeeze education and all the different Squeeze strategies. Like there's something called the crab strategy, which open launched, which is like very cool. It's about like minimizing exposure to like ETH, but also like playing around with Squeeze. So it's been really cool and really
Mhm,
fun to learn
mhm,
about this
mhm.
product because it's not necessarily super easy.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
so I primarily do like community and education, and I also play around with product, like
Nice.
speaking with people who help make markets, speaking with people like a lot of user testing, and just figuring out like product market fit for all things Squeeze and anything that like touches that universe.
That's super cool. What is again? The last thing I wanted to ask you is like, tell me a little bit about Fem3 Voices and like your work
Yeah, I
there.
know. Oh my god, this entire podcast has just been us like shooting the shit.
That's
Yeah,
all good.
Empty Voices is amazing. It's actually I always feel like I should not take much credit for it because the amazing Ali, it was her complete idea. She wrote the Fem3
Cool,
article,
cool.
a little wordplay on Web3,
Mhm,
and invited me to be part of it. And so I absolutely love it. We run it together, we host it together, and we essentially are just trying to highlight women and non-binary folks in this space
mhm,
because both Ali and I realized she's undoxed, I'm doxed, but we both realized like we've had like very interesting experiences as like people who like, or at least like women presenting in the space. And we wanted to highlight the incredible women because both of us were super sick of like the where are the women because I only have like women on my timeline. Like it's super funny. I'm like, I have
mhm.
so many women. I'm like, what are you talking about? And so
Yeah,
does
I
she.
know.
And I'm like at these events, I literally hang out mostly with women. So I'm like, there was that joke like in crypto is like the one place where like for the women's room won't have a line to the bathroom. I'm like, I don't know about you guys, but any event I'm at, my women's room would like
Yeah, yeah,
there's so many girls like
yeah, yeah, 100%.
um so we want it literally it's just been like mostly our friends or
Mhm,
like people that we really admire that we've
mhm,
had
mhm.
on. And so Ali and I have been like super busy and it's just a pure passion project. We don't do it for any nothing. And so we just like do a Twitter space and then we write up a little piece about it. And that's been super fun because I think Ali's an incredible writer. So I've
Yeah.
always been super fortunate that Ali invited me on just to like we just will it's become super informal. We just like hit somebody up and we're like, you in the middle of your Twitter space and just talk. And they're just super fun and we learn so much about like women in the space. Has our gender identity impacted them? Does it not?
Mhm.
And we've gotten so many different answers. And so it's also just been really helpful for both Allie and I to like realize like our relationship with it and like to try and figure out like if we want to onboard more women and non-binary folk into the space, like how do we do that and like what role does gender play? Does it play a role? Does it not? And if so, how?
That's awesome. That's super cool. That's partly like the mission here at like Kickbox as well. Just finding like people who are like marginalized communities and just like figuring out ways to give them bigger voices and sort of
Yeah.
help them with that education and that barrier to entry I was talking about before, so that they feel a little bit more comfortable after hearing your story and like want to like take that hop in.
Yeah,
So
I
yeah,
love that.
it's been awesome talking with you. I think we just have time for our last section, which is our WTF section, and so it's who to follow. And so we just say our Twitter account that we think is cool and we want people to go check out. Mine for this week is Stephen Bartlett. That's Steve Bartlettsc. We actually interviewed his head of growth a couple weeks ago. So it's Kickblocks alumni, and they just announced that after launching Third Web 9 months ago, they just raised 24 million at $160 million valuation. So
Oh my
congrats to them.
gosh.
Go check out Stephen. He's building, he's out here working, and so congrats to that team. So you WT.
And my WTF, because we already were just talking about her, I'm gonna do Allie. I have to shout out. I know you
Hey.
want such like a formal one, which is great.
No, no,
Allie
go.
is an even better shit poster than me. I honestly take a lot of my shit posting motivation from her. Allie and I will text each other's tweets before we post. If
Nice.
like we're like, is it funny?
Yeah.
So that her username is at son of Allie. So
Okay.
SONOFALLI. And I think that she's 10 times funnier than I am. And I think I'm pretty funny. So I think that you guys should follow that account.
Amazing. Okay, cool. Thank you so much for that. I'm definitely going to check out her page. And this is Regan, not Reagan, another episode of Kickbox Podcast. And we'll catch you guys next week. Peace.
Bye, y'all.